With feed prices as high as they are right now, there's a lot of people who are looking for ways to try to trim their feed bill or maybe completely eliminate it altogether. I'm going to show you today exactly how you can do that with something that most people consider a weed. Stick around. All right, guys, you can see that we've got some really cool stuff going on behind me. We've got a tarp down, which is a silage tarp that is killing off all of the grass and all of the weeds that are out there right now. We're going to do some really cool permaculture things with that. I've got some green area here that we still need to put silage tarp on. And then we've got some area over here that we're going to actually use for our potatoes. If you remember, we do all of our potato planting via the root stout method or the no-till method. So this hay is going to be very useful for that. We did not make it into our first planting this year. And we've got some pretty big news on why we didn't make it into that. So more to come in a future video where my wife and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are coming on. But big news from our little homestead perspective, but more to come on that. But if you haven't seen how we grow our potatoes, check out some of these videos. I'm going to link it up above. But we've got a whole series on how to grow via root stout method, and that's what we're going to be doing over here. But today, we've actually got something else going on. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what some people consider a weed, but is very beneficial for everybody to have on a small or big homestead. Now, feed prices are off the charts and they continue to go up every single day. I feel like every time I go to a feed store, it's always a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And if you have any number of animals, whether you've got chickens or goats or any type of smaller animal, obviously you're probably limited on what you're grazing. In our case, we've got rabbits, we've got quail, we've got chickens, and those are three things that we are always trying to find a way to feed more efficiently. Now, in our case, we've got rabbits that are on pasture, and that helps us a tremendous amount. When you think about us actually feeding those, we're constantly moving our tractor along, and I've got a link above on how we do that, and I've actually kind of show you guys how we built that rabbit tractor. My wife actually did that, but we've got a method where we can feed our rabbits about 3 seasons out of the year with just what's in our yard or in a slightly larger area, but we actually do all of that in tractoring, and the rabbits are able to eat clover and all of the dandelions and weeds and things that most people would think of as just trash, we actually use to feed our animals. Today, I'm going to show you something that you've probably seen before or maybe even have heard about, but it's a very cool plant called Comfrey. Now, Comfrey is the type of plant that most people would think of as a weed. It's actually, there's several varieties of it, but Comfrey is something that has some amazing benefits. And if you live on a homestead, it's absolutely something that you want to check into. First things first, Comfrey is a prolific grower. It will grow very large. Now, this plant is actually root bound, and you can see that it's been in this pot for a little bit. We reused a pot. This is a raspberry pot that we planted these in, and I'm going to put a video out, and when I get it linked, I'm going to link it up above. But I'm going to put a video out on how we planted these. We did it all from root cuttings, got very cheaply on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description now for that as well, but I'm going to do a video on that later if you're interested in how to do this. But these were all from root cuttings, very economical, and these things grow like crazy. Now, you want to get the specific type of comfrey that does not go to seed. So you can see that these shoot up and they'll have flowers at the tips. And if it's not the right variety, those will actually produce seeds. Now, in our case, we're using a variety which is called Bocking 14, which is Russian comfrey, and that does not go to seed. It only propagates through root cutting. So that's a good thing because this stuff can actually get really big and it can overtake a space if you're not careful. Similar to lemon balm or peppermint or any type of mint, really, it will kind of grow pretty rapidly, but by keeping it limited just to root cuttings, these things will stay somewhat confined to where you put them. Now, I'm telling you guys that this stuff is a pretty amazing plant, and the reason I tell you it's a pretty amazing plant is because, believe it or not, comfrey is able to grow as much protein content as soybeans. So if today you feed your animals, say, a type of feed that has soybean feed in it, which most feeds will, that have some composition of corn and some composition of soybean meal and or oil, that comfrey that I just showed you will actually have 15 to 30% protein by weight. And that comfrey now is rivaling soybeans. So soybeans run somewhere between 20 to 25% protein, where comfrey runs in that same range, but it comes without any of the negative side effects, which are things like estrogen. A lot of people are doing studies right now and they're trying to figure out the connection between soy milk, soy products, and estrogen. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to go into the details there, but if you're concerned about that, this may be a great option to then feed your animals because you can get the same exact amount of protein and it has a ton of nutrients in it as well, but without any of the extra side effects that come along with soy products. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video today about how to grow comfrey, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more information. Also, click the like button. Helps us out a ton. If you'd like to drop us a comment or ask us questions, do that too. We'd love to hear from you. Now, I'm standing in front of a really large soybean field right now behind me, and there is a time and a place for soybeans, so I have no problems with soy products as a rule. If you want to feed them to your children, if you want to eat them, that's fine. And I think that they are good for certain things. However, I also want to make sure that we provide options to people. And options are what it's all about. Especially if you're on a small homestead, you can't grow this. So this requires heavy machinery, it requires large tractors, it requires all kinds of pieces of machinery to plant, harvest, and then process soybeans. So while you could grow them maybe on a small scale, you really couldn't grow them at scale to feed very much, and it's complex, right? You're having to go through in the process of getting those beans out, and then this uses a ton of fertilizer and things like that that most people wouldn't want to be trying to do. In our case, we're trying to go with more of a permaculture method. When we say permaculture, we're really talking about trying to use no pesticides, low pesticides, and no-till or low-till type of methods. And so this is a little incongruent with how we're trying to do things. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it from time to time, but it's not consistent with how we want to approach things, generally speaking. Comfrey is. So I've already told you that the University of Wisconsin has actually done studies on comfrey and shown that it has as much protein as most legumes, including soybeans, so it runs really, really good. So there's some really good nutrients there. Some other things that you might want to know about comfrey, however. The first thing I want to share with you is that's a nutrient miner. Now, when I say it's a nutrient miner, it sends roots down 6 to 10 feet into the ground. That's a really, really deep root system. And those roots are going to bring up nutrients to that plant, which would usually be inaccessible to plants in your garden in a normal sense. None of our plants, none of our crops, I'll call it, so corn, none of our rooted vegetables, none of our beans, things like that, they don't drop roots that anywhere come close to 6 to 10 feet deep. It's simply just not going to be the way things work. So in your garden, you're going to need to get nutrients from deep into the ground into your garden. Now, you can do that through chemical fertilizers. You can try to do that through some amendments. But one of the ways that you can do that naturally is through comfrey. Now, because it's a nutrient miner, it's going to pull up those nutrients and it's going to then get into the foliage of the plant. And we talk about the foliage of a plant. Now, this plant has some big leaves. Now, this is root bound. So unfortunately, this has a really small amount of foliage right now. So we're not able to do anything with this. These are small leaves. I haven't been able to plant these because of some things that are going on, but I do have some footage of where you can see comfrey being planted and where it's been allowed to actually grow up naturally. It is a perennial. So in the fact that comfrey will come back every single year, even if the frost kills it off, it's very hardy. It will stay up pretty late in the season, but frost will kill it off, but it'll come back next season. But when you plant it, the leaves get really large and it has a lot of yield per plant, which you can do 2 cuttings of a year to feed to your animals. So I want to pivot real quick and show you what a comfrey plant looks like when it actually has an opportunity to grow. Now, those others were all root bound like I showed you, and this one wasn't even planted. I actually took those pots that you saw earlier. They were sitting here in our flower bed over the winter, and their roots dropped down through those plants where they were root bound into our flower bed. And so we've got this flower bed out here. It's really more of a raspberry bed, but it dropped in there, and now you can see that these are the comfrey plants, and they are shooting straight up. They are huge at this point, and the leaves are much, much bigger than what you would have seen previously in those other plants. And so you can see, you know, compared to my hand back here, this plant is huge. I'll grab a leaf real quick. This is a leaf from this other plant now, and you can see it looks very different. It's not been root bound, so it's getting all the nutrients that it needs because it's dropping those roots way down deep into the soil. This thing is super green. It's been very, very dry here. We haven't watered anything. And even with that dryness, this thing is just thriving. It's got flowers that are popping out of it now. It's getting towards the time it needs to really be cut down. It needs to be cut back so it can be used again. There's 2 cuttings a year. We can use it now, and then we can use it later in the season. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to point out to you is comfrey, when you're using it to feed animals, you may want to be aware of a few things. You can't really see it well on here, but there are a line of hairs that go down a comfrey plant stalk and even on the edges of the leaf. Now, to some animals, that is a little bit unpalatable. Rabbits sometimes are not super excited about it because the hairs are a little abrasive. They're not quite as palatable as, say, young clover or something like that. It's a very smooth leaf. However, our rabbits actually eat this just fine. They don't have any problem with it at all. But if you have a problem with animals eating this, all you have to do is let it wilt. When you let it wilt for a day to 2 days, then the hairs actually wilt as well, and they're not stiff anymore, and all of the animals have no problem at all. So if you have a picky animal that doesn't want to do that, then just take and let it wilt, and the plant and the animals will eat it just fine, no problem. So we've talked about a few things today. We've talked about how this is an amazing nutrient miner. We've talked about how the fact that it mines from way down, maybe 8 to 10 feet down into the ground, far deeper than anything else. We've also talked about how it has just as much protein as soybeans, which is pretty amazing for something that you can grow at home in your backyard. Now, we've talked also about how getting Bocking 14 is the way to go here. But one more thing that I wanted to share with you is that when you go about planting Comfrey, one of the benefits is fertilizer. Now, you can take this stuff and you can actually break it off from the stem and then just go and lay it around your plants. And because this has so many nutrients, trace elements, it actually has great amount of nitrogen in it as well. Because it has all of these different elements in it, just by laying it down, you can actually lay it as a compost or lay it as just a mulch around your plants, especially fruit trees, berry plants, those types of things. They do very well because it has a significant amount of phosphorus for what it is. It has a decent amount of phosphorus in it, nitrogen. It works really well as a good fertilizer. Now, some people don't want to wait long enough for this to decompose and start feeding their plants. So one of the ways that you can speed this along is by making Comfrey tea. All you have to do is take these leaves, you put them into water, cover it up, and let them just kind of stew. If you can get it into a hot place in a dark container where it starts breaking down faster, it will actually create a tea. I called it a stew, but it's Comfrey tea is what it's called. This stuff is one of the worst smelling things that you can think of. Think of it as just like swamp water. Like anything that starts getting kind of that decomposing smell to it when it sits in water, it's going to have an odor to it. Compost tea, if you're used to using compost, you know that if you put some stuff in there and it gets really wet and swampy, it kind of gets a really strong odor. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's not pleasant. Now, to you, that's horrible. To the plants, they love it. It actually speeds up the breakdown of all the good stuff that's inside this Comfrey leaf. And so you can make small batches of Comfrey tea, and then you can water your plants. And if you're having a situation where your plants are kind of yellowing, this stuff is a good alternative to try to pick those plants up in a short period of time. One, it's going to get them water. Two, it's going to have all those nutrients that are ready to be absorbed. It doesn't have to break down. It doesn't take time. Because you're making this Comfrey tea, it's more of a jolt. It's almost like giving them an IV to help them get up to speed faster. And so you can pour that directly on the plants. It's not going to hurt anything, but you can make Comfrey tea. It is fantastic. Compost tea is great too, but Comfrey tea is the best. Hey guys, we've loved hanging out with you today. If you've enjoyed this video, click that subscribe button and pound that like button. It helps the algorithm figure out that this is a video that others need to see as well. We think that this is a worthwhile thing to try to feed yourself and feed your family. It doesn't matter if you have a back porch, a backyard, or a back 40. Our goal is to help you learn how to be more self-sufficient with what you have. And we hope you've learned something today, guys. As always, have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time on the Purpose Driven Homestead. Guys, if you're enjoying this video today, make sure you subscribe and click that pound button. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video today, make sure you click subscribe and also click that like button. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video today about how to grow Comfrey, make sure you click that subscribe button. Also, click the pound button. Click the pound button? Why do I keep saying that? Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video today about how to grow Comfrey, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more information. Also, click the like button. Helps us out a ton. If you'd like to drop us a comment or ask us questions, do that too. We'd love to hear from you. And before you guys ask, no, we're not sponsored by Rural King, but we do like their stuff a lot and love their stores. So, Rural King, if you're watching this, reach out. We'd love to talk to you.